Now, this story is called A Mean Wolf. So, once upon a time, a long, long time ago, in a faraway place, not around here, but in a very, very faraway place, way up in the sky, is where unicorns are born. It's where unicorns are born. Now, unicorns, I don't know if you know this, but unicorns are born in the spring every year, and they come in all different colors. Some unicorns are purple. Some are purple with a yellow tail and a yellow mane. Some are red. Some are orange. Some are normal colors, brown and white or yellow. They come in all different kinds of colors. And some are born with wings, and some don't have wings. But unicorns can jump like crazy. They can jump way higher than this building. Way higher than this building. They can jump over trees, big, tall trees. And they can run fast as you can imagine. Now, every spring, unicorns are born. Bunches of them. And they all grow up together. Well, one spring, all the baby unicorns were born. And one of them had no horn. Because when unicorns are born, they have a little bit of a horn in their forehead that grows out as they get older and older into a long, pointy, sharp horn. Well, this baby unicorn had no horn, and his name was Randolph. Randolph had no horn. Now, it didn't matter when he was a little guy in the first few weeks that he was born, because he ran around and played. He didn't have wings, but he was a very good jumper. Oh, boy, could he jump. And when he was a little tiny unicorn, he could jump higher than the ceiling. And as the summer went on, he got to be a bigger unicorn, and bigger, not quite full size, but pretty big. He could jump over trees. He could jump higher than any other unicorns. And when they would play tag, watching unicorns play tag is really cool, because they run like crazy all over the place, and then they jump. Just as they're about to get tagged for it, they jump like crazy. And if you don't jump exactly at the same time, you can't tag the other unicorn. So they were very good runners and jumpers. Well, the problem was, as Randolph got bigger and bigger, he would cross his eyes and look, no horn. And it made him sad. All the other unicorns were very nice to him. They were very nice, and they included him in all their games, but no horn. And it made him feel bad. Now, it just so happened that in that land there lived a wicked witch. And the wicked witch did mean things. And it so happened that the witch hated frogs. And so one day the wicked witch did some magic, and she created a huge black wolf. And the black wolf had red eyes. And she told the black wolf, I want you to go out and eat all the frogs in the land. And here's what happens. You have magic, so you'll be invisible when you're sneaking up on the frogs. And just before you pounce on them is the only time they'll be able to see you. But by then, it'll be too late, and you can gobble them up. So the wolf went out, and started sneaking around in the land and eating frogs. And he would sneak up on frogs, and they couldn't see him coming. And he would sneak up, and just before he pounced, they could see him, but it was too late. Pounce! And he'd gobble them up, frog after frog after frog. And pretty soon, the frogs in the land, there weren't very many, and he kept after them. Well, Randolph got quite sad one day about no horn. And so he decided not to play with the other unicorns that day, and he went off in the forest. And he trotted through the forest, through the trees. And he trotted further and further away from the big open area where all the unicorns played. And he came to a little opening in the forest where there was a little stream coming along, a little water coming through the stream. And as he trotted out into that area, he heard, "Ribbit, ribbit." And he looked over at the edge of the stream, and there was an enormous, big, old frog. "Ribbit, ribbit." Well, Randolph trotted over, and the frog said, well, in a deep froggish voice, sort of like this. "Well, little fellow." I can't quite say it exactly the way he did, but, "Well, little fellow, you look quite sad today. What seems to be the problem?" "Well, Mr. Frog, I am really sad." And Randolph started to cry a little. "I've got no horn." And the frog said, "I can see that, little fellow. That's a big problem. And my horn isn't growing, and all the other unicorns have horns, and I don't have one. And I can't play with them anymore because their horns are growing out and getting sharp, and I just don't want to be around them anymore." "Well, little fellow, I wonder if we could do something about that," said the frog. Randolph said, "Do you think we could do something about it? What do you think?" And the frog said, "Here's what you need to do. Go out of the forest, around the lake. On the other side of the lake where you guys play, because there was a big lake there, he said there's a big, tall tree. And way up in the top of the tree is old Mr. Owl. If you go over to old Mr. Owl, he might be able to help you." And so Randolph said, "Cool. Okay, I'll do it. Thank you very, very much." And Mr. Frog said, "Now," in his froggish voice, "be sure you come back and tell me what happens." And Randolph said, "Okay." And with that, he trotted away, and Mr. Frog went into the stream and swam into his house, which was in the edge of the bank of the stream, where the dirt came down. There was a hole, and he crawled inside his house. Well, Randolph went trotting around through the forest, around the lake. It was quite a way. And sure enough, on the other side of the lake was a big, tall tree. And a lot of the branches were kind of dead in it. But if you looked way, way, way high up in the tree, there was an enormous owl. And the owl stood about that tall. And he was sitting there with his eyes closed, because owls sleep during the day. And Randolph looked up and he said, "Mr. Owl, Mr. Owl, Mr. Owl, Mr. Frog sent me to come and see you, Mr. Owl. Please look down." For a long time, Mr. Owl didn't look down at all. And then one eye opened, and he bent down. And in an owlish voice, He said, "Can't you see I'm trying to sleep during the day?" And Randolph said, "Yes, but I've got a big problem, Mr. Owl. And Mr. Frog, old Mr. Frog sent me over here to ask your help." "Well, what is your... I see that you do have a problem. You don't have any horn." "I know. I was born without a horn, and all the other unicorns have horns, and I don't have one. And Mr. Frog said you might be able to help me." Mr. Owl straightened up, and he kind of looked out over the valley. And then he bent down again. He said, "Here's what you need to do. On the other side of the lake is a cliff. And where the cliff comes down to the ground, there's a big piece of white rock. You need to charge that piece of white rock and butt it with your head 3 times as hard as you can. And then you need to go over to the blueberry patch by the edge of the lake, and you need to mash blueberries into your forehead 3 times. And then you need to go to the edge of the lake and wade out in the yucky mud at the edge of the lake, and you need to mash mud on your forehead 3 times. And he straightened up, and his eye closed, and he went back to sleep. So Randolph said, okay. So he trotted around the other side of the lake, and sure enough, there was a big rock cliff. And in the rock cliff was a white rock about this big and this big, and it was just the height, just the right height for him. And so Randolph said, okay, here goes. And he backed up about as far as from here to the other side of the room, and he started running as hard as he could, and he hit the cliff with his forehead. Boom! And he went, oh, and it almost knocked him out. And he wandered around, and he couldn't see very well, and he had a cut on his forehead. And he wandered around, he said, oh, that hurt. I don't like that. That hurt. And he said, I don't want to do this anymore. But he thought, that's what the owl had told him. I need to do it again. So he backed up again. Then he got about this far away, and he said, here goes. Brum, 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 boom. And he hit the rock with his forehead. And he almost fell down, and he saw stars in his eyes because it banged him so hard on the forehead, and his cut got bigger, and blood started to run down his face. And he was almost knocked out, and he said, that really hurt. I hate this. That really hurt. Ah! And he said, I don't want to do this anymore, but Mr. Owl told me to, so I'm going to do it because I want to do whatever he said. So he backed up again. And he charged as fast and hard as he could, and boom, he hit the rock with his forehead. And this time he fell down on his knees and started walking around on his knees because he couldn't see anything, and he almost tipped over, and his eyes were going all crazy. And he had a big cut in his forehead now. And blood was running down, and it hurt like crazy, and he was dizzy, and he had a headache like crazy. So after a while, he said, okay. So he stood up, and he went over, and he found blueberry bushes right where the owl said they would be. And so he bent down and on his knees, and he got his head and smashed blueberries into the ground. And blueberry juice got all over his face and in his cut, and he had blueberry juice. And he did it 3 times until there was purple blueberry juice running down all around his face, dripping off his chin. And after he had done that, he walked over in the lake, and sure enough, there was black, yucky mud at the edge of the lake. I mean, and so he kneeled down on his knees, and he mashed his head down into the mud. Mud got in his eyes and in his ears and all over his head and face and everything until he was covered with black, yucky mud. And he did that 3 times, just the way the owl said. And he was a mess. And he got up out of the mud, and he went out to the big field where all the unicorns were playing, and they looked at him and they said, "What happened to you? You are a mess. You've got blood and yuck and purple stuff and mud all over your face. What is going on?" And Randolph said, "It's just something I'm doing. It's just something I'm doing." And they said, "Well, do you want to play today?" And he said, "No, I've got a little bit of a headache. I think I'm going to go and have a nap." And so he trotted over to the trees out of sight of the rest of the baby unicorns and lay down and had quite a long nap. So every day from then on, he'd cross his eyes and look up. No horn. And the mud dried, and the blueberry juice dried, and it kind of fell off his face. No horn. And day after day went by. No horn. And he had been pretty excited when he first did what Mr. Owl told him. But now he started to get sad again. No horn. And the days went by, and finally he said, "It didn't work. Mr. Owl was wrong. It didn't work. I've got to go tell Mr. Frog it didn't work. And Mr. Frog's got to think of something else for me to do, because it didn't work." So he went off through the forest. Now he was trotting through the forest, and he came to the open place in the forest where the stream was. And as he walked out, about as far away as the other wall over there, he saw Mr. Frog, who was a big, fat frog, sitting on the edge of the stream. And he was going in his froggish voice, "Ribbit, ribbit." And what the unicorn didn't see was sneaking up behind Mr. Frog, invisible, was a huge black wolf with red eyes. And he was crouched low to the ground, sneaking like a cat up on Mr. Frog. And the baby unicorn, the young unicorn, trotted out of the forest, and he started trotting across the grass. And he called out, Mr. Frog, it didn't work." And just as he started to say it didn't work, the wolf was ready to pounce. And the wolf was right behind Mr. Frog. And the unicorn could see the wolf, because just before the wolf pounced, he became visible. But usually it was too late. And the wolf was ready to jump, and his eyes were wide and red, and his mouth with huge teeth was open, and slobber was coming out of his mouth. And he was ready to jump, and the unicorn saw it, and he said, "Ah!" And he started running as fast as he could, because he was going to butt the wolf with his head as hard as he could and try and knock him away. And he started running across the grass as fast as he could, running. And the wolf went like that on the frog. And just as he got there, out of his head came a long horn. And and the wolf was leaping through the air, and the unicorn Randolph got there, and he saw this horn. Randolph saw this horn coming out of his own head, and he got there, and he put his horn right into the body of the wolf in midair. And the horn went all the way in, up to Randolph's forehead. And the wolf went, "Ah!" with a screaming noise. And Mr. Frog turned around and jumped into the water. And Randolph backed out and pulled his horn out of the wolf's body. And his horn was covered with blackish wolf's blood. And the wolf fell on the ground. And all of a sudden, he was gone. Because the wolf was made out of magic. And when the wolf was killed, the magic was over. The wolf was gone. So, Randolph trotted over to the edge of the bank, and he looked down in the water. He said, "Mr. Frog, you can come out now. Mr. Frog, you can come out." And out from his house came Mr. Frog and hopped up on the bank. And Mr. Frog looked at Randolph with black stuff all over his beautiful horn from the body of the wolf. And Mr. Frog said, "Hello, Randolph. I see that Mr. Owl showed you how to get your very own horn." And Randolph smiled and he said, "Yes, he did." And that is the end of the story.